Welcome to Techietalkee.
Hello friends, in this video I'll be explaining about the exception handling in Python. So whenever we write a piece of code, there are chances that we might end up in writing a code with incorrect syntax. These are called syntax errors. During the execution of the code, the parser displays a message which is the syntax error indicating that there is an invalid syntax that has to be corrected. Sometimes we might observe that even if our code is syntactically correct, Python might still throw error during the code execution. And this kind of error is called exception. Basically, there are two types of exceptions, built-in exceptions and the user-defined exceptions. Built-in exceptions are the ones that are raised by Python, whereas the user-defined exceptions are the ones that are defined by us. I will walk you through the exceptions in detail along with the examples. Consider this example where I have a list named list1 containing 5 values which are A, B, C, D and E. So we know that the index always starts from 0. So list 1 of 0 is going to retrieve me A and it will go on, and the list 1 of 4 is going to be E. When I execute this code, I can see that A, B, C, D and E are printed in my output window. If I make an attempt to print list 1 of 5, which is not available in that list 1, then Python will throw me an index error which says list index out of range, because the index value ends in 4, but I am trying to retrieve the value of 5 as well. This error should not disrupt the code execution, so I need to handle it. So I'll make use of the try and except block to catch this exception. Here I have given a try block which contains my code piece and the except block which will handle the possible exception error. So in this case it is except index error. So I'm going to print, please check the list index value. If I try to execute this code, my code is going to print me the values from A to E, and then it will print the message, please check the list index value, because an exception was thrown by this particular print statement. So this is how we can catch an exception in our code by using the try and the except block. When I compare this code without the try and the except block, I can see that the list items got printed, but the only difference is that without try except, the system generated error got printed, whereas with the try except block, my customized error message got printed. Now, do I really need this try except block? What is the actual purpose of it? Consider this example where I have another list which is list 2 and I'm printing the values of it as well. When I execute this code, what I can see that the values from A to E got printed, after which Python threw the exception error and the execution did not go beyond that. The main advantage of handling the exception is that Python allows you to provide specific error messages and also to continue the execution of the code if the exception is handled properly. Otherwise, the program may terminate, leading to incorrect results. Now, let us modify this code to handle exceptions for both the lists. I have a try block here, and inside that I am printing the values of list 1, and in the except block I am catching the exception on index error, and then I have another try block for list 2, and then I have an except block to catch the index error for list 2. So if I execute this code, I can see that the values from A to E got printed, and since list 1 of 5 is not available, the message, please check the list index value got printed. And in the second try block, I have defined list 2 and I'm printing the values of list 2. So XYZ also got printed in my output window. Consider the scenario where I might end up with multiple exceptions in the code. In this example, I have handled only for index error. For the remaining errors, I want a generic print statement. In that case, I can give another except block, and also I am printing 10 by 0. So this again is going to throw an exception which I am not handling in the except block. So I have one generic except block which will say print exception. Now let's see what happens if we execute this code. So it is going to print the values from A to E, because here I'm printing from list 1 of 0 till list 1 of 4. And after that, since I'm printing 10 by 0, the second except block got executed which says check exception, and hence that got printed in my output window. Suppose if there are no exceptions, then our code works perfectly fine. In that case, after the try block, the execution goes to the else block. So actually this block is optional and we can make use of this block if required. So in my example, I'm going to print a statement that is execution completed without any exceptions in the else block. Now let's see what happens if we execute this code. The values from A to E got printed, and after that this line got printed which says execution completed. Say for example, I need a code logic to be executed even if the try block executes completely without any exceptions. In that case, I can make use of the finally block. After the try block, I have one except block for index error and another except block to catch all the other exceptions apart from index error. And if there are no exceptions, this else block is going to be executed. And I have this finally block which will get executed even if there is any exception or not. And then I have another try block which is going to hold the values of list 2 along with the except and the finally block. Now let's see what happens if we execute this code. So in my first try block, A, B, C, D and E got printed, and print 10 by 0 is going to throw me an exception which got caught here. So a print which is a check exception got printed in my output window, and after that the execution went to the finally block which says end of list 1 execution, and that is what got printed here in the output window. After that, we have the next try block which is going to print X, Y and Z, and it is again going to have another finally block which is going to print end of list 2 execution. So the difference between the else block and the finally block is that the else block will execute if no exceptions were raised, whereas the finally block will execute even if exceptions were raised or not. I'll be releasing videos on the various built-in exceptions that we have in Python. The other type of exception that we have in Python is the user-defined exception. So developers can throw an exception when a specific condition is met. Let me show you with an example on how to raise a user-defined exception. I have list 1 which is going to hold the values of A, B, C and D, and then I'm going to append a blank space to list 1, and after that I'll be appending E to list 1, and in the next for statement I'm printing the values of list 1. So when I execute this code, I can see that A, B, C, D followed by blank space and then E got printed in my output window. What if I want to have a control on the values that are being entered in the list? I don't want a space to be present as a list item. So this is when I can throw an exception by making use of the raise keyword. I have made a minor modification to the for block where I have included an if condition which says if x is equal to a blank space, then I'm going to raise an exception which says space is not allowed as a list item, else I'm going to print the value. Here I can see that the values A, B, C, D got printed, after which there was a blank space, and Python had raised an user-defined exception which says space is not allowed as a list item. And because of that, we are able to see an exception here in the output window. Hey guys, hope you now understood how to use a built-in exception and define a user-defined exception.
Thank you for watching this video. If you have any queries, you can reach out to me at techietalkee@gmail.com. Happy learning and have a great day.